Welcome to the live stream. So I didn't put out any videos today because I was busy running around like a crazy person. And then when I did have time to work on some projects, I kept getting deeper and deeper into craziness. But here we go, check this out. Boom! And Marlin 1.1.6. Yes! Okay, so to a lot of you, that might not be a big deal. But for those of you know, the Creality CR-10 does not come with the latest and greatest Marlin firmware, and it is kind of a pain to flash the proper firmware and all that stuff to it. Anyways, so to get all of this fixed, well, I guess here, let me start off again. I was trying to figure out why the prints on this iris box were not coming out nice and neat, but prints on all of my other random stuff was coming out very clean. So to do that, let me take you on a magical journey of what I did and what I figured out, and hopefully it is something that y'all can learn from, because I kind of wanted to murder myself today because it was such a pain in the butt. So started off trying to figure out how to get rid of the zits on the iris box, and I used Simplify 3D as my slicer, and what I was looking at was the internal thin features, and there's this thing called gap fill and then single extrusion fill. Gap fill goes in between the perimeters and does this ziggy-zag type of fill, and that usually works very well most of the time. But Simplify 3D also developed, or they're at least implementing, this new thing called single extrusion fill, where it essentially varies the width of the bead that's being extruded in between the perimeters, and it can go between like 50% of the normal bead size to 200% of the bead size. That way it's almost like a balloon that it can shrink or inflate to fill different gaps. So that's really cool, and I thought that's what was giving me heartache with the iris box. So I kept digging and digging and digging, and finally I was just like, you know what, there might be something in the firmware as far as acceleration and jerk settings. I'm just gonna flash the newest, latest and greatest Marlin firmware. Let's see what else. Also, if you are curious, Simplify 3D has a really amazing page set up for like any type of 3D printing issues that you may have, and like symptoms, and then some ways to fix it. Now, the way that they have some of their fixes is based off of their slicer, but there's some really solid principles that you can find here that will help you navigate the perils of 3D printing. I'm always coming back and referencing this whenever I have questions about specific features within Simplify 3D. And again, I'll have links and everything down in the description. They're not there right now, but I'll put them in the doobly-doo before the end of today. So you can check on that later to check out this awesome webpage with all these cool things. Now also, to flash the firmware on my CR-10, I found this video. Solid Ground is the name of the channel, Solid Ground Electronics. And this is a really cool review video, and then he goes through technically what to do to flash the firmware onto the CR-10. And I've done that previously, and he has an Arduino IDE. Let's just click on it real quick. Let's see here. He has a very, very awesome accent. Yes. All right, so in the show more, he's got these files. Where are they? Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Somewhere. Anyways, he has, where are they? I think low sensor mount, no. Creality, shoot. Okay, well, I'm not gonna spend the time to find it, but somewhere in this description he has the links to the firmware, and like it has a portable Arduino build, and it's very important to use that Arduino IDE build when flashing and playing with firmware on the Creality CR-10, because it needs a special Sanguino driver, and I found that very difficult to get installed correctly into the regular Arduino IDE that I had installed on my desktop. Okay, moving on. From there, I decided, okay, I wanted to upgrade to the 1.16 Marlin, so then I found this video called Eric's DIY, that's the name of this guy's channel, and it was amazing. It was exactly what I needed. He literally goes through, downloads the stock Marlin, like from the website, like the bone stock Marlin, and then proceeds to for the next 30 minutes walk through every single change that you need to make in the firmware, and it is stellar. It's amazing. So if you're wanting to go through the Marlin firmware and know exactly what changes, what acceleration, what values for every little thing, this guy does it, and this video is super helpful. So I'll have that down in the link as well. This is, again, to get the latest and greatest Marlin 1.1.6. All right, from there, I then realized, I want to go ahead and put on a custom boot screen because I'm in the firmware, I'm in, tinkering with all this stuff. I might as well do it. It shouldn't be that difficult, right? Well, it was a little bit harder than I expected. But Robo3D has this awesome page, and again, I'll link it down below. And you just follow the little tutorial, download a simple application called, LCD Assistant, and then make your logo and then create it into this weird text file and then drop that into your firmware, and then bingo bango, you have your sweet logo. It's pretty cool, and that was worth it. And then also there's this video here that is not super great, but has some helpful things in it if you want to watch that. And then I ran into, when I had it all working on the Creality CR-10, the firmware was all loaded, I was not able to do a filament change. And I was fighting, there was nothing really online that really showed what to do to get the filament change to work. And so I just kind of played with it for a real long time, and I'll show you really quickly what I ended up finding works. So you go to the Configuration Advanced tab, and then you type in, what is it? I think you just do Advanced Pause Feature. So you search for this right here, and it brings up this entire menu. And stock, that is commented out. So you have to uncomment that, and that then enables it in the menu. And then you also need to uncomment these two right here. These were commented out. You need to uncomment them and activate them. Also, these values, if you do this, be very careful because you're dealing with extrusion distances and feed rates. So I took a tape measure and I measured exactly how long it would take to pull the filament out of my specific Bowden tube, and then how far to put the filament back in when you're loading the filament back in. So obviously you want to extract more length than you load back in because you don't want to load it in all the way to the hot end because it'll be very aggressive when it loads in quickly. And then the last little bit you want it to load slowly. Anyways, you can figure this out, but the Configuration Advanced tab is where that is. However, it was pulling the filament out, but it was not putting the filament in. And I figured, or excuse me, it was not pulling filament out, it was only putting it in. And if you go to configuration and then you look at, let's say, I think it was minimum, let's search for minimum, and it was like minimum, what was it? Oh man, it was like minimum distance, or extrusion distance. There was like a weird variable. Oh man, where'd you go? All right, we'll find this real quick, sorry. Oh no. I can't find it. That's embarrassing. Let's see here. I believe it was it maximum? Anyways, in the configuration H, there was a maximum extrusion distance or something like that. Man, we'll just find it. Hold on. Bear with me. Or length. I think it was length. Ah, okay, perfect. So just search for length, and it's max length. And here we go. We have prevent lengthy extrude and stock. This was set to like, I think 20 or something, or 200, which is way underneath what I need to extrude or pull out to get all the filament out of my Bowden. So if you change this number to be higher the 600 needs to be higher than whatever you put in here to extract the filament, then this will start working. And there's no like error, it just like totally skips it in the code. So it's hard to troubleshoot because you don't know really what part is working, what part's not working. All of this, if you uncomment it like I showed you, will work, but it won't actually do anything if this max length is less than the other number. Also, I found out there's a minimum extrude temperature, which we all know about, and that's good because we want to make sure and not have the extruder grind filament because it's too cold to extrude. Well, if you want to run the to change filament and do an atomic pull, you have to do it at a lower temperature. So 110 works well for me for the PLA. So basically I heat it up to like a normal like 200 degrees, extrude a few centimeters of plastic, and then set the temperature to 110. Once it comes down to 110, I basically tell the printer to pull the filament out, and it pulls it like the perfect plug and everything. It does an atomic pull for you. Now, if you don't want to do that, if you want to leave this min temp higher, then you can do one of these commands. An M302 basically tells you if min temp is, it tells you what min temp is set at. And you can temporarily disable min temp by typing in an M302, M302S0, and that will allow you to then move the extruder without running into that min temp error. Once you do that, then you can run the M600 command, and that M600 command will come back and run the extract sequence to the distances that you put into here. So this is, again, super convoluted, and I'm sure most of you are just like, what is he talking about? But this is something that took me a while to figure out, and hopefully this will help some people. I know this is not a super thorough explanation, but there's a lot of questions that this video hopefully will answer for people. Okay, and then after that, I realized everything was working, and I was like, yay! But then I realized that I had this mount upside down. I don't know how I managed that, but it was like, had the extruder much lower than it needed to be. So I flipped it around, put it on the right way, and now I gained some Z height back in my extruder. And then also the wires, if y'all had noticed before, were just a mess, and it was all kind of bunched up and I kind of took it upon myself to rewire everything, and now it's nice and clean, so that's exciting. Yeah. So I think that, oh, and then this is the mount that I'm using. It's pretty amazing. It works very well. But yeah, so I think that will do it for now. Let's see here. I'm just gonna do a quick little this thing. Thanks for kind of bearing with me. Today was not super productive as far as the YouTube channel and 3D printing, but I figured out a lot of stuff about the Creality, and hopefully if there's anyone else that was struggling with getting the stuff that I struggled with to work, this video will help save you a ton of time. And the printer is printing very well with Marlin 1.1.6. I put in the acceleration and jerk settings that Eric in his DIY video suggested. And also the biggest thing, and this is like, oh, I feel really bad about this. The biggest thing that I figured out that was causing this terrible surface finish is straight up print speed. Yeah. I was printing around 80 millimeters a second, and that's just too fast. Like, it could extrude, like everything was working. I don't know, just something about the way it does retraction and then moves over at the next layer. When you print to a higher speed, that is like the one thing that really gets thrown off. So I brought down print speed to about 65, like 60 millimeters a second, and like prints started coming out beautifully, like how I expected and how everything was printing before all this mess. So lesson learned was all of this could have been avoided. I could have saved a ton of time if I just reduced print speed probably. And on that bombshell, I will see you next time. Oh man.